Elara lived in a world woven from paper and quiet contemplation. Her bookstore, the chaptered nook, was a sanctuary of soft lamplight and the faint, sweet scent of aged pages. Nestled in the heart of Oakhaven, a town content with its predictable rhythms, the nook was Elara's refuge and her kingdom. Here, amidst towering shelves groaning with stories both ancient and new, she found a gentle solace that most people sought in bustling company. But even in the quietest corners of her beloved shop, and especially during the hushed hours before dawn, when the town still slept, Elara heard it. Not with her ears, not precisely, but with something deeper, something in her soul. It was a sound like the rustle of leaves that weren't there, the faint sigh of wind through an open window when none was ajar, a melody too subtle for the ordinary ear. It was a whisper. She called it simply Whis. Whis wasn't a continuous sound. It came and went, a delicate, ethereal hum that pulsed through her quiet moments. It accompanied the steam rising from her morning tea, the gentle turning of a page, the dust motes dancing in sunbeams. Sometimes it felt like a forgotten lullaby, sometimes like a distant call, a half-remembered promise. It was always gentle, always comforting, yet imbued with an undeniable sense of longing, a yearning for something just beyond her grasp. Elara was in her late 20s, with eyes the color of moss after rain and hair the shade of a rich chestnut, often escaping its neat braid. She moved with a quiet grace, her hands quick and knowing as they sorted books, dusted shelves, or brewed the perfect cup of Earl Grey. She loved Oakhaven, its familiar faces, the comfort of its unchanging seasons. Yet, Whis was a constant reminder that there might be more to discover, a different melody to learn. She'd always felt a gentle pull towards the unknown, a flicker of curiosity that hummed beneath her practical exterior. She'd tried to follow Whis once or twice in her younger, more impulsive days. She'd chased it through the fields surrounding Oakhaven, convinced it was the wind carrying secrets from the ancient woods to the north. She'd listened intently by the river, imagining it was the song of the water spirits. But Whis was elusive, fading as soon as she pursued it directly, only to return when she ceased her frantic search and simply listened. It was as if Whis wanted her to be ready, to be still, to feeling her way towards it rather than chase it down. Over time, Whis became less a mystery to solve and more a cherished companion, a silent promise woven into the fabric of her life. It was a secret she kept close, a private whisper of magic in an otherwise ordinary world. One cool autumn morning, the kind that smelled of damp earth and wood smoke, Elara was doing what she loved best, rummaging through a newly acquired collection of antique books. An elderly professor, relocating to a sunnier climate, had entrusted her with his entire library, a treasure trove of first editions and leather-bound wonders. Elara had spent the past week carefully cataloging each volume, her fingers brushing over embossed covers, her eyes scanning faded inscriptions. Today she pulled out a particularly heavy tome, its spine cracked and worn, titled Forgotten Lore of the Northern Reaches. It was bound in dark green leather, almost black, and felt strangely cool to the touch. As she carefully opened it, a folded piece of parchment, yellowed with age and brittle at the edges, slipped from between its pages. It landed with a soft sigh on her worn wooden counter. Elara's heart gave a little thump. This was unusual. While old books often held pressed flowers or forgotten letters, this parchment felt different. It was thicker, almost like vellum, and etched with lines that weren't words, but a series of delicate, intricate symbols she didn't recognize. And then, she saw it. It was a map. Not a conventional map, not one with neat labels for towns and rivers. This was a sketch, rendered in fine, faded ink, depicting a dense forest. There were no names, only abstract markings, a swirl that might be a hidden spring, a cluster of dots that could indicate a grove of ancient trees, and a series of curving lines that snaked through the wilderness. Most striking of all, at the very heart of the map, was a single, shimmering symbol. It looked like a ripple in still water or a sound wave expanding outwards, encircled by a faint, almost invisible aura. And as her gaze settled on that symbol, Elara heard it. Whis. Clearer than ever, a soft, resonant hum that vibrated not just in her mind, but in the very air around her. It was as if the map itself was singing, a silent, ancient melody. She traced the lines with a trembling finger. The forest depicted wasn't just Ganny forest. The general contours, the way the lines of hills dissolved into dense woodland, vaguely matched the geography of the Whispering Woods, a vast, ancient forest that lay to the north of Oakhaven. Most locals avoided it, tales of getting lost and strange echoes keeping them away. But Elara, with her inherent curiosity, had always found its mystery alluring, never forbidding. The map wasn't complete. It showed only a portion of the woods, focusing on a specific, unmarked area. And there, near the shimmering symbol, a tiny, almost imperceptible symbol was drawn. A small, elegant, beautiful Whis. It couldn't be a coincidence. This was it. The clue she'd unconsciously waited for, the tangible thread to follow. Her hands shook slightly as she carefully laid the map flat. The old book, Forgotten Lore of the Northern Reaches, lay open beside it. She flipped through its pages, hoping for a clue. The text was archaic, filled with references to ancient spirits, hidden pathways, and the song of the unseen. There was no direct mention of a map, no explanation of the symbols. It was as if the map was meant to be discovered, not described. A thrill, wild and exhilarating, shot through Elara. This wasn't just a fantasy in a book. This was real. This was a horror story, unfolding before her very eyes. The comfortable routine of the chaptered nook, for all its warmth, suddenly felt too small, too quiet. The call of Whis, amplified by the ancient map, was undeniable. For the rest of the day, Elara moved in a haze of suppressed excitement. Customers came and went, oblivious to the momentous discovery hidden beneath her counter. She helped old Mr. Abernathy find a new mystery novel, discussed the merits of literary fiction with young Miss Clara, and shared a laugh with Mrs. Henderson over a particularly amusing autobiography. All the while, her mind was buzzing, 1,000 questions forming, 1,000 possibilities blooming. That evening, after she'd locked the shop and the last sliver of twilight had faded, Elara spread the map across her kitchen table. She brewed a strong cup of chamomile tea, her favorite for moments of deep thought, and sat down. The flickering lamplight cast long shadows, making the symbols on the parchment dance. She pulled out her own modern map of Oakhaven and its surrounding areas, a detailed topographical survey she'd bought years ago out of a vague sense of preparedness. Overlaying the two was impossible, given the abstract nature of the old map. But she could approximate. The general shape of the hills, the curve of the forgotten river that wound its way into the Whispering Woods, it all aligned. The starting point, a distinct cluster of old stones known locally as the Sentinel's Gate, was clearly marked on her modern map. It was about a day's journey on foot from Oakhaven, a full day of steady walking through pastures, and along the edge of the smaller, more accessible forests. Beyond the Sentinel's Gate, the modern map simply showed Whispering Woods, uncharted. But the ancient parchment continued, beckoning her deeper. The shimmering symbol, the heart of the W, seemed to pulse with a faint light in her mind's eye. Fear, a small practical tremor, tried to assert itself. What if it's dangerous? What if you get lost? What if it's all just a wild goose chase, a trick of an old book? But the fear was quickly overshadowed by something stronger, pure, unadulterated curiosity, and the deep, persistent hum of Whis. It felt right. It felt like destiny. Elara knew she couldn't simply walk away from this. Whis had chosen its moment. She had to go. The next morning, Elara posted a neat handwritten sign on the door of the chaptered nook, closed for inventory, reopening in 1 week. It was a white lie, but a necessary one. Her friends would understand. She often took solitary retreats when the shelves became too cluttered or her mind too full. This time, her inventory was of a different kind, an inventory of self, of wonder, of a world yet to be discovered. She spent the day meticulously preparing. She packed a sturdy canvas backpack with essentials: dried fruit, nuts, bread, a thermos for water, a warm blanket, a first aid kit, a compass, and a small reliable flashlight. She chose her most comfortable hiking boots, a waterproof jacket, and layered clothing. She also tucked in a small notebook and a pencil, a habit she couldn't shake for recording thoughts or sketches. And, of course, the ancient map, carefully folded and placed in a waterproof pouch, along with her modern map. Before she left, she placed a small framed photograph of her parents on her bedside table, a silent promise to return safely. They had always encouraged her quiet adventures, her love for stories, and her independent spirit. They would have understood this pull. As the first sliver of dawn painted the sky with hues of rose and gold, Alara stepped out of her cottage, backpack snug on her shoulders. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. Oakhaven was still asleep, its windows dark, its streets empty. It felt like she was the only one awake, the only one embarking on a secret quest. She took the familiar path out of town, past the sleepy farmhouses and rolling fields. The hum of Whis was clearer now, a gentle presence that seemed to guide her steps, a soft melody in the background of her thoughts. It wasn't a loud sound, never overwhelming, but a persistent, encouraging cadence. The landscape slowly shifted. The cultivated fields gave way to wilder meadows, dotted with wildflowers and tall grasses swaying in the morning breeze. The path narrowed, becoming less a paved road and more a trodden track, winding through clusters of younger trees. Alara found herself smiling, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. This felt right. This felt like freedom. By midday, she reached the edge of the true wilderness. The path dissolved entirely, replaced by deer trails and the occasional faint indentation of what might once have been a logging road. The trees grew taller here, their branches intertwining overhead, creating a dappled canopy that filtered the sunlight into dancing patterns on the forest floor. This was the territory leading towards the Sentinel's Gate. She consulted her modern map, then the ancient one, trying to orient herself. The Sentinel's Gate was a distinct landmark, a natural archway formed by two massive, moss-covered boulders, resembling ancient sentinels guarding the entrance to the deeper woods. It was a place steeped in local lore, said to be a boundary between the known world and something older, wilder. As she drew closer, the trees grew denser, their trunks thicker, their leaves a darker, richer green. The air grew cooler, imbued with a fresh, earthy scent. The sounds of birdsong, which had accompanied her journey, grew softer, replaced by the rustle of unseen creatures and the gentle sigh of the wind through the ancient boughs. And then, she saw it. Two immense boulders, gnarled and ancient, stood sentinel-like, framing a narrow opening. Their surfaces were covered in a thick carpet of emerald moss and delicate ferns, looking as if they had stood there for millennia. It was exactly as described in the old tales and exactly as she had imagined. A natural gateway to the unknown. Alara paused, taking a deep breath. This was it. The threshold. As she stepped between the two boulders, a shiver, not of cold but of profound sensation, ran down her spine. The air on the other side felt different, thicker, cooler, yet vibrant. The dappled sunlight seemed to shimmer with an almost otherworldly quality. The sounds of the forest intensified, not in a startling way, but as if everything was suddenly more alive, more present. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the subtle murmur of a hidden stream, they all wove together into a symphony, and at its heart, she heard Whis. It was no longer a faint hum. Here, within the whispering woods, Whis was a clear, resonant melody, a gentle, sustained chord that permeated everything. It felt like the very breath of the forest, the pulse of ancient magic, the song of forgotten stories. It was beautiful, overwhelming in its subtlety, and utterly captivating. Alara pulled out the ancient map. The shimmering symbol in its heart seemed to glow faintly in her mind, drawing her in. She now understood why it was called the Whispering Woods. It wasn't just the wind, it was whistling. She began to follow the indistinct lines on the parchment, trusting her instinct and the ethereal guidance of Whis. The forest floor was soft with centuries of fallen leaves, making her footsteps almost silent. The trees here were magnificent, towering guardians with roots that snaked across the ground like ancient serpents. She saw patches of wildflowers she'd never encountered before, their petals glowing with unusual colors. Moss-covered stones, like forgotten altars, dotted the landscape. The map led her deeper, away from any semblance of a path. She navigated by the subtle shifts in the terrain, the direction of the stream she occasionally glimpsed, and most importantly, the increasing clarity of Whis. It was like a compass, pulling her towards its source. Hours passed. The sun began its slow descent, painting the western sky in hues of orange and purple, though only slivers of it reached Ilara through the dense canopy. She found herself in a part of the woods that felt truly untouched. The trees here were impossibly old, their branches draped with long tendrils of silvery moss, their gnarled trunks etched with the passage of countless seasons. She was tired, but the exhilaration kept her going. She knew she needed to find a place to rest for the night soon, but the pull of Whis was so strong, so close. Then, she saw it. Nestled deep within a grove of particularly ancient oaks, where the moss grew thick and verdant on every surface, was a clearing. It wasn't large, perhaps 20 feet across, bathed in the soft, fading light that filtered through the leaves. In the very center of the clearing stood a stone. Not a natural boulder, but a carefully carved ancient stone, roughly cylindrical, about 3 feet tall. Its surface was smooth, worn by time, and etched with the same delicate, intricate symbols she had seen on the map. And from this stone, Ilara realized, came the clearest, most resonant echo of Whis. It was like a silent bell, ringing deep within her, a profound sense of peace and belonging. This was the source. This was the heart of the W on her map. As she stepped into the clearing, the air grew even cooler, almost crisp, and tinged with the scent of pine and something else, something sweet and wild. She approached the stone, her hand reaching out almost reverently. Just as her fingertips brushed its cool surface, she noticed something else. Tucked into a small hollow at the base of the ancient stone, almost hidden by a cluster of ferns, was a small, intricately carved wooden bird. It was no bigger than her thumb, made of a dark, smooth wood, and its delicate wings were outstretched, as if in mid-flight. Its eyes were 2 tiny, perfectly inlaid pieces of amber, catching the last of the fading light. It wasn't just a carving. It felt warm to the touch, and as Ilara carefully picked it up, she felt a subtle vibration within it, a faint, rhythmic pulse that echoed the hum of Whis. This wasn't something left by chance. This was a message, an offering, a sign. As she held the bird, the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, plunging the clearing into a soft twilight. The ancient trees seemed to lean in, their leaves rustling with an almost audible murmur, as if watching her, waiting. Ilara looked around, her heart thrumming with a mixture of awe and anticipation. She was here at the very heart of Whis. But she wasn't alone. This little wooden bird, pulsing gently in her palm, was proof of that. Someone else knew of this place. Someone else had been here. And then, from the deeper shadows at the edge of the clearing, a sound, distinct from the gentle hum of Whis, reached her ears. A twig snapped. A soft rustle. It was the sound of footsteps approaching. Ilara froze. The small wooden bird clutched tight in her hand, her breath catching in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs, no longer with excitement, but with a sudden, electrifying jolt of surprise. She turned slowly towards the sound, her eyes straining to pierce the deepening gloom. Her senses heightened, every fiber of her being alert. The whispering woods, which had felt so welcoming moments ago, now held a new, thrilling unknown. A figure emerged from the veil of trees, tall and lean, silhouetted against the fading light. He moved with a quiet grace, his steps light on the forest floor, as if he belonged here, an integral part of the ancient woods. Ilara's breath hitched again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something akin to awe. As he drew closer, the deepening twilight softened his features, yet couldn't obscure the thoughtful curve of his brow or the strong line of his jaw. His hair, dark as the pine needles beneath their feet, fell just so over his forehead, and his eyes, even from this distance, held a calm intensity. He wasn't looking at her directly, but rather observing the path, his gaze sweeping the ground with a focused intent. He carried no axe, no hunting bow, just a leather-bound journal clutched loosely in one hand, and a charcoal stick protruding from a side pocket. He looked like an explorer, or perhaps an artist, lost in the quiet pursuit of beauty. He lifted his head then, and his eyes, a deep, striking hazel, found hers. A flicker of surprise, a faint parting of his lips, and then a gentle smile bloomed, transforming his features from stoic contemplation to approachable warmth. It wasn't a wide, boisterous smile, but a soft, genuine one that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners just so. "Good evening," he said, his voice a low, resonant murmur that seemed to perfectly suit the hushed reverence of the woods. It was a voice that invited trust, like the quiet gurgle of a hidden stream. Elara felt a blush creep up her neck, her heart still thrumming a quick rhythm against her ribs. She was acutely aware of her wind-tousled hair, the smudges of wood dust on her simple tunic, and the tiny wooden bird still clutched in her hand. She felt utterly exposed, yet, strangely, not uncomfortable. His gaze was curious, not judgmental. "Good evening," she managed, her voice a little breathy, a little softer than she'd intended. She instinctively tightened her grip on the bird, as if it were a talisman against her sudden shyness. He took another step, closing the remaining distance between them, though still maintaining a respectful space. He gestured vaguely at her hand. "That's a beautiful carving." His observation was simple, direct, and unburdened by artifice. Elara looked down at the tiny bird, its wings delicately spread, its head tilted in silent song. She'd been so lost in her own thoughts, she'd forgotten it was even there. "Thank you," she replied, offering a small, hesitant smile. I carved it." His hazel eyes widened imperceptibly, a flicker of genuine admiration passing through them. "You did? It's exquisite." He spoke with an easy appreciation, not flattery, but a true understanding of craftsmanship. Elara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling more potent than the last rays of the sun. Few people truly understood the effort, the patience, the soul she poured into her carvings. To have a stranger recognize it so immediately, so sincerely, was a rare and precious gift. "I try," she said, finally relaxing her grip on the bird and offering it slightly for a closer look. He stepped closer, his gaze gentle as he leaned in to examine it. His proximity brought with it the subtle scent of pine and something else, something clean and earthy, like freshly turned soil and old paper. "Remarkable," he murmured, his voice laced with quiet wonder. He didn't touch it, but his eyes traced every curve, every intricate line. "I've never seen anything quite like it. What kind of wood is this?" "Rowan," Elara said, almost without thinking, then quickly added, "The wood, I mean. It's rowan wood. It has a lovely grain, and it's said to be quite protective." She felt foolish for blurting out the tree type, but his interest was so genuine. He straightened, a soft chuckle escaping his lips. "Rowan wood, you say? How fitting." He extended a hand, a strong, calloused hand, yet with long, elegant fingers that suggested dexterity. "My name is Rowan." Elara's eyes widened, a genuine, unbidden laugh bubbling up from her throat. "No way." She shook his hand, her palm fitting surprisingly well into his. His grip was firm but gentle, sending a surprising jolt of warmth through her. "I'm Elara, and I can't believe that. That's quite a coincidence." "Indeed," Rowan agreed, his smile deepening, his eyes twinkling. "Perhaps the woods have a peculiar sense of humor." He released her hand, though Elara felt the lingering warmth long after. He gestured to his journal. "I come here to sketch, and to observe. I'm a cartographer of sorts. I map the old forest trails, document the flora and fauna, and sometimes, if I'm lucky, I stumble upon a hidden glade or a particularly ancient tree." "A cartographer," Elara repeated, intrigued. "So you draw maps? Not just of places, but of life within them?" "Precisely," he said, nodding. "The land isn't just lines on paper, is it? It's the life that breathes within it, the stories it tells, the secrets it holds. And the whispering woods, well, they have more stories than most." He looked around, his gaze sweeping over the ancient trees, now cloaked in the deep purple hues of twilight. "What brings you to this part of the woods, Elara? And so late?" I come here often," she admitted, feeling a comfortable ease settling between them now. "I find inspiration here. My workshop is in the village, but sometimes I need the quiet, the magic of the trees, to really connect with the wood. Tonight, I was looking for a particular kind of light, a feeling. I'm trying to carve a series of birds, each representing a different aspect of the woods, a different song." She gestured with the rowan bird. "This one is the song of new beginnings. Or so I hope. Rowan listened intently, his head tilted slightly, his expression thoughtful. The song of new beginnings, he echoed softly. That's a beautiful concept, and this little fellow certainly embodies it. There's a hopeful energy radiating from it. He paused, then gestured deeper into the woods with a slight incline of his head. If you're looking for a particular kind of light and a sense of magic, there's a clearing not far from here. When the last light of dusk filters through the canopy, and the first stars begin to appear, it creates a unique kind of glow. It's where I often find myself when I'm looking for inspiration for my own maps, for the hidden pathways of the heart of the forest. Elara's eyes lit up. A clearing? I thought I knew most of the clearings around here. This one is a little tucked away, Rowan explained, a hint of playful mystery in his voice. It's easy to miss if you're not looking for the subtle signs. Would you care to see it? He offered the invitation with a gentle deference, leaving her free to decline. The thought of walking deeper into the woods with a stranger, as dusk turned to night, would normally have made Elara hesitate. But there was something about Rowan, his calm demeanor, his genuine appreciation for her craft, the gentle sincerity in his hazel eyes, that dispelled any apprehension. He felt safe, like an old friend she hadn't known she was missing. I'd love to, she said, a genuine smile gracing her lips. Lead the way, Rowan. He nodded, a quiet pleasure in his expression, and turned, his gait still unhurried, yet purposeful. Elara followed, her heart light, the rowan bird now tucked safely into her pocket. The air grew cooler, carrying the damp, sweet scent of decaying leaves and night-blooming flowers. The sounds of the woods shifted, the daytime chirps and rustles giving way to the deeper, more mysterious calls of nocturnal creatures. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the soft crunch of their footsteps and the whisper of the breeze through the ancient branches. Rowan moved with an easy familiarity, navigating roots and fallen branches as if they were part of his own path. Elara found herself observing him, noting the way his shoulders subtly shifted with each step, the slight tension in his back as he concentrated on the trail. He truly did seem at home here. So, Elara, Rowan began, breaking the silence as they ducked under a low-hanging branch. You mentioned your workshop. Are you from the village? Yes, she replied. I've lived there my whole life. My family has been woodcarvers for generations, though I'm the first to focus primarily on birds. My father, he mostly made furniture, sturdy things for everyday life. Beautiful in their own way. But I always felt drawn to something lighter, something that captured movement and spirit. And you found that in birds, Rowan mused. That makes perfect sense. They are the essence of freedom, aren't they? Of song and flight. And what about you, Rowan? You said you map the old trails. Are you from around here? I don't recall seeing you in the village before. He chuckled softly. No, I'm not from the village. I've been traveling for a few years now, documenting forests across the land. The Whispering Woods are particularly rich in history and biodiversity, so I've settled in a small cabin on the outskirts for a season or two. It's a quiet life, but I enjoy the solitude, the endless discoveries. Traveling alone? Elara asked, a touch of wonder in her voice. The thought of such independence, such freedom, both thrilled and intimidated her. She had always been rooted in one place. Mostly, he confirmed. Though the trees are good company, and the occasional badger or deer. He glanced back at her, a hint of wistfulness in his hazel eyes. It can get lonely at times, but the beauty of the world usually makes up for it. They emerged into a small, unexpected clearing. It wasn't large, perhaps only 20 feet across, but it was perfectly circular, enclosed by a ring of towering ancient oaks, whose branches intertwined high above, forming a natural dome. The ground was covered in a carpet of soft moss, interspersed with tiny, luminous mushrooms that glowed with a faint, ethereal light, like scattered stardust. In the very center stood a single, slender silver birch, its white bark gleaming faintly in the deepening gloom. Oh, Elara breathed, stopping short, her eyes wide with wonder. Rowan, it's breathtaking. The light here was indeed unique. The last vestiges of twilight filtered through the oak canopy, creating a dappled, silvery glow that mingled with the soft luminescence of the mushrooms. It felt less like a clearing and more like a sacred space, a hidden sanctuary. I told you, Rowan said softly, a quiet pride in his voice. He walked to the center, approaching the silver birch, and gently ran a hand over its smooth bark. This is where I often come to gather my thoughts, to sketch, to simply be. Elara joined him by the birch, her fingers itching for her carving tools, for a way to capture this moment, this feeling. It's like something out of a dream, she whispered, looking up at the canopy, where the first few bright stars were now piercing through the darkening blue. I've never seen anything quite like it. The Whispering Woods have many such secrets, Rowan said, his gaze fixed on the stars. You just have to know where to look, or perhaps be open to finding them. He turned to her, his expression serious but gentle. You spoke of longing for a sense of place, Elara, and of new beginnings. Do you feel rooted here in the village? Elara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I love my home, my craft, but sometimes it feels too small. As if there's a wider world I'm meant to explore, but I don't know how to take the first step, or where to even look for it. My birds, they fly. But I stay. She felt a sudden vulnerability, sharing such a deeply personal yearning with someone she had only just met. Yet, with Rowan, it felt natural, almost necessary. Rowan listened, his hazel eyes reflecting the dim light of the clearing. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. When she finished, he simply nodded. I understand that feeling, he said, his voice quiet. The call of the unknown. It's a powerful siren. Sometimes, the widest world isn't out there, beyond the horizon. Sometimes, it's right here, in the depths of a forest, or within the intricate patterns of a bird's feather. It's in the way we choose to see things, to experience them. He paused, then looked directly at her. And sometimes, new beginnings are found not by flying away, but by finding new connections, new roots, right where you are. His words resonated deep within Elara. She had always assumed her desire for more meant leaving, meant abandoning her craft, her home. But what if it meant something else? What if it meant seeing her world with new eyes? I've never thought of it that way, she admitted, her gaze meeting his. There was a profound sense of understanding in his eyes, a mirroring of her own unspoken longings. It's a cartographer's perspective, Rowan said with a small smile. Every map, no matter how detailed, is only a fraction of the story. The true story unfolds in the spaces between the lines, in the journey itself. He gestured towards the mossy ground. Shall we sit for a moment? We can watch the stars fully emerge. Elara nodded, grateful for the invitation. They settled onto the soft moss, a comfortable silence falling between them once more. The air grew cooler, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the silver birch, creating a soft, almost musical whisper. Above them, the sky deepened to an inky black, and more stars began to glitter, like diamonds scattered across velvet. Elara found herself stealing glances at Rowan. In the starlight, his profile was etched with a quiet strength. He seemed so self-possessed, so at peace with himself and his place in the world. She wondered what kind of maps he drew, what stories he had collected in his journeys. She felt an almost overwhelming desire to know more about him, to peel back the layers of his quiet demeanor. Do you ever sketch the stars? She asked, breaking the silence. Rowan turned his head, his hazel eyes finding hers in the gloom. Sometimes, though they are harder to capture than a tree or a flower, their beauty is in their vastness, their ancient light. But I try to mark the constellations, the pathways they trace across the night sky. They are, after all, the oldest maps known to man. He picked up a small, smooth stone from the moss and turned it over in his fingers. Tell me more about your birds, Elara. What other songs do you hope to carve? Encouraged by his genuine interest, Elara found herself speaking freely, sharing her ideas, her creative struggles, her small triumphs. She spoke of the wren of joy, the owl of wisdom, the sparrow of resilience. Rowan listened intently, occasionally asking a thoughtful question that revealed his deep understanding and appreciation for the natural world. He spoke of the unique calls of each bird, the subtle differences in their flight patterns, the way they interacted with their environment. He even knew the legends and folklore associated with many of them. Time seemed to melt away in the star-dusted clearing. The initial awkwardness of their meeting had long vanished, replaced by a profound sense of connection, a shared reverence for the quiet magic of the woods and the beauty of creation. Elara found herself laughing more easily, feeling a lightness she hadn't realized she was missing. Rowan in turn seemed to open up, sharing anecdotes from his travels, describing the rugged beauty of distant mountains or the serene tranquility of coastal forests. He spoke of a hidden waterfall he'd once mapped, its waters said to hold ancient memories, and of a grove of petrified trees, standing like silent sentinels of a forgotten age. His words painted vivid pictures, expanding Elara's world far beyond the familiar confines of her village. She realized that Rowan wasn't just mapping places, he was mapping experiences, emotions, the very soul of the land. "You see the world so differently," Elara said, a hint of awe in her voice. "You find beauty and meaning in everything." Rowan smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "It's all there, Elara. You just have to truly look, to listen. The woods, they whisper their stories to those who are willing to hear." He paused, then added softly, "And you, Elara, you carve their songs. That's a powerful gift." The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, sent a shiver down Elara's spine, a pleasant warmth spreading through her veins. It was more than just a compliment. It felt like a validation, an encouragement to continue on her path. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, simply watching the stars, feeling the gentle pulse of the forest around them. The air was cool now, crisp and invigorating, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. A faint shimmer of moonlight began to filter through the canopy, painting the moss in silver and shadow. "It must be getting quite late," Rowan said finally, his voice tinged with a reluctant sadness, as if he too wished the night could last forever. Elara felt a pang of disappointment. She hadn't wanted this evening to end. She hadn't realized how much she had needed this conversation, this connection. "Yes," she agreed, "I suppose it is." He stood first, offering her a hand. His touch was warm and steady as he helped her to her feet. For a moment they stood close, the moonlight casting long shadows around them, their eyes meeting in the soft glow. There was an unspoken understanding, a shared reluctance to part. "Thank you, Rowan," Elara said, her voice soft. "Thank you for showing me this place, and for everything." He smiled, a gentle warmth in his hazel eyes. "The pleasure was all mine, Elara. Truly, it's not often I find such kindred spirit in the heart of the woods." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, flat piece of charcoal. "Would you mind if I sketched your bird sometime? Perhaps even you, as you carve. I'd love to capture the artistry." Elara's heart fluttered. The invitation was unexpected yet thrilling. I would like that very much," she said, a genuine blush rising to her cheeks. "When?" Rowan considered for a moment. "How about tomorrow evening? Perhaps we could meet at the edge of the Whispering Woods by the old moss-covered stone. It's easy to find, just as the sun begins to set." "The old stone," Elara repeated, her mind already picturing the spot. "Yes, I know it. I'll be there." A quiet satisfaction settled over Rowan's features. "Excellent. Then I look forward to it, Elara." He walked with her back through the now fully dark woods, the path illuminated by the faint moonlight and the almost imperceptible glow of his presence beside her. They spoke little, but the silence was no longer merely comfortable. It was charged with a new anticipation, a quiet promise. When they reached the edge of the woods, where the first village lights twinkled in the distance, they stopped. "Good night, Elara," Rowan said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "Good night, Rowan," she replied, her gaze lingering on him. She watched as he turned and melted back into the shadows of the Whispering Woods, becoming one with the mystery and magic from which he had emerged. Elara walked home, the rowan bird nestled safely in her pocket, its carved wings a silent promise. Her heart was full, not with the familiar ache of longing, but with a new, burgeoning sense of hope. The woods still whispered, but now their whispers carried a name, a promise, and the exhilarating possibility of a new beginning, not just for a carved bird, but for her own heart. She smiled, a radiant, genuine smile, as she thought of tomorrow. The world, it seemed, was indeed full of hidden pathways, and she was finally ready to explore them. The morning sun, usually a quiet invitation to her daily rhythms, felt different. It streamed through her window, painting stripes of gold across her worn rug. But today its warmth seemed to hum with a secret. Elara rose, a lightness in her step that had been absent for too long. The carved bird, nestled safely on her bedside table, seemed to glow in the morning light, its smooth wood echoing the promise of yesterday's whispers. She picked it up, tracing the delicate curve of its wings with her thumb. It wasn't just a piece of wood. It was a beacon, a question mark, a silent invitation. A genuine smile touched her lips, a smile that reached her eyes, making them sparkle with an unfamiliar excitement. She hadn't felt this surge of joyful anticipation since she couldn't even remember when. Her breakfast, usually a solitary affair, felt imbued with purpose. She savored her tea, its warmth spreading through her, mirroring the warmth blossoming in her chest. As she dressed, choosing her favorite soft linen dress, she found herself humming a tune she hadn't realized she knew. Every movement was deliberate, yet buoyant. She braided her long brown hair, weaving in a few wildflowers she'd gathered from her garden, a small unconscious gesture of hope and readiness. Before she left her small cozy cottage, Elara carefully placed the carved bird in the pocket of her dress, its solid weight a comforting presence against her side. She knew where she was going. The whispers of the woods had been clear, guiding her not to a specific address, but to a feeling, a clearing, a quiet understanding of where such a treasure might have come from. She would follow the winding path that led deeper into the ancient oak grove, past the sun-dappled stream, to the old stone ruins nestled beside a particularly gnarled hawthorn tree, a place she often visited for its serene beauty, a place where she had once felt a strange, almost tangible sense of peace, as if the very air held a story. The walk was invigorating. The woods, usually a solace, now felt like an accomplice. Birds chirped overhead, their songs seeming to mirror her own soaring spirits. The scent of pine and damp earth filled her lungs, grounding her, yet her heart still fluttered like a butterfly. She paid attention to every detail, the intricate patterns of moss on the tree trunks, the delicate unfurling of fern fronds, the way the light dappled through the leaves, creating shifting patterns on the forest floor. It was as if she was seeing the woods for the very first time, imbued with a new purpose. As she neared the clearing, a faint scent of sawdust mingled with the earthy aroma of the forest. Her breath caught. This was it. Tucked away beside the ruins where she had expected only ancient stones and wild brambles, stood a small, sturdy timber structure, half hidden by ivy and overgrown shrubs. It wasn't a cottage, but clearly a workshop. A plume of pale smoke curled lazily from a small chimney, and the rhythmic tap-tap-tap-tie of wood on wood drifted on the gentle breeze. Her steps slowed, a sudden wave of shyness washing over her. What if she was wrong? What if this was just a woodcutter, not the creator of such delicate beauty? What would she say? "Excuse me, I found this bird and I think it might be yours?" It sounded utterly ridiculous. But the hope, so fragile, yet so potent, spurred her forward. She pushed aside a curtain of ivy, revealing a sturdy wooden door, slightly ajar. Through the opening she could see a workspace, filled with tools, wood shavings, and half-finished carvings. And then she saw him. He was seated at a workbench, his back to her, deeply absorbed in his work. Sunlight from a high window illuminated his broad shoulders and the dark, slightly unruly hair that fell over his collar. He wore a simple, well-worn tunic, and his hands, strong and dusted with wood dust, moved with an astonishing grace, coaxing shape from a small block of timber. The a-tap-tap-tay he continued, a gentle rhythm that seemed to orchestrate the quiet hum of the forest. Elara stood there for a long moment, mesmerized, a silent observer in a private world of creation. He seemed utterly at peace, lost in the intricate dance between his hands and the wood. She cleared her throat, a soft, hesitant sound. He paused, his hands still, and slowly turned. His eyes, a startling shade of green, met hers. They were kind eyes, intelligent, and held a depth that spoke of quiet contemplation and perhaps a touch of solitude. A faint blush rose to his cheeks, and he ran a hand through his hair, dislodging a few wood shavings. "Hello," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble, like the murmur of the stream she'd just crossed. It was a voice that immediately put her at ease, despite the sudden flutter in her chest. "Can I help you?" Elara felt her own cheeks warm. I hope so," she managed, her voice a little breathy. She reached into her pocket and carefully withdrew the carved bird. She held it out to him, letting the morning light catch its smooth, elegant form. "I found this yesterday near the old hawthorn tree just outside the clearing. It's so beautiful I thought it must be yours." His gaze dropped to the bird in her hand, and a slow, beautiful smile spread across his face, lighting up his eyes. "My little lost friend," he murmured, a genuine warmth in his tone. He reached out and gently took the bird from her, his fingers brushing hers, sending a shiver of unexpected connection through her. His touch was warm, calloused, yet incredibly gentle. "I thought I'd lost him for good. I must have dropped him when I was gathering some cedar bark." He turned the bird over in his palm, his smile softening further. He was meant to be a gift for a friend's new baby, a symbol of freedom and hope. He looked up at her, his green eyes sparkling. "Thank you, truly. I'd almost given up hope of finding him." "He's exquisite," Elara said, her gaze lingering on the delicate carving. "The detail, it's truly remarkable." "It's just a simple bird," he demurred, though a pleased light entered his eyes. "My name is Ronan, by the way." He extended a hand, still holding the carved bird in the other. "Elara," she replied, taking his offered hand. Her fingers fit perfectly against his, a comfortable warmth spreading between them. "It's more than a simple bird, Ronan. It has a soul." He chuckled, a rich, pleasant sound. "Perhaps it does. I try to put a little of myself into each piece." He gestured around his workshop. "I carve mostly for the village, small repairs, custom pieces. Sometimes I just carve for the sheer joy of it, like this little fellow." He looked at her, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. "You don't look like you're from around here, Elara. Not if you just stumbled upon my hidden workshop." "I live just on the other side of the woods," she explained, gesturing vaguely. "A small cottage near the old mill pond. I often walk through these woods. They're my refuge." "Mine too," he agreed, his gaze sweeping around his workshop, then back to her. Would you like to come in? It's a bit dusty, I'm afraid. But perhaps you'd like a cup of tea. I just put the kettle on." Elara's heart warmed at the simple invitation. "I'd love that, Ronan. Thank you." She stepped into the workshop, a haven of scent and texture. The air was thick with the sweet, clean smell of freshly cut wood, mingled with the faint aroma of tea and something herbal. Tools of all shapes and sizes hung neatly on the walls, alongside shelves laden with various types of wood: dark, rich mahogany, pale, creamy birch, aromatic cedar. Half-finished projects lay scattered on another bench: a delicate wooden comb, a sturdy book stand, a whimsical carved squirrel. Ronan moved with a quiet efficiency, clearing a space on a small sturdy table in the corner. He poured 2 mugs of steaming herbal tea, its fragrant steam rising to mingle with the sawdust. As he handed her a mug, their fingers brushed again, and this time, the spark felt undeniable. "So, Elara of the Millpond Cottage," he began, settling onto a stool opposite her, "what brings you to the heart of the woods so often?" She took a sip of her tea, the warmth a comforting presence in her hands. "Peace, mostly, and inspiration. I design patterns for textiles. Nature is my greatest muse." She felt a surprising ease in sharing this with him, a man she had just met. The textures of the leaves, the patterns of light and shadow, the way a flower unfurls. It all finds its way into my work. "That's beautiful," Ronan said, his eyes reflecting a genuine interest. "I find the same in wood. Every piece has a story, a grain, a unique character waiting to be revealed. My job is just to listen to it and help it become what it was always meant to be." He gestured to the bird in his hand. "Like this little one, it wanted to fly." They talked for what felt like hours, yet the time flew by. They spoke of their passions, of the quiet satisfaction of creating something with one's hands, of the solace found in the natural world. Elara learned that Ronan had inherited the workshop from his grandfather, a master carpenter, and had devoted his life to the craft. He spoke of the different types of wood with an almost poetic reverence, describing their inherent qualities, their strengths, their weaknesses, their hidden beauties. He showed her a piece of gnarled oak, explaining how he would coax a sturdy bole from its rough exterior. Elara, in turn, found herself opening up about her own life, a life that had often felt solitary despite its creative fulfillment. She spoke of the quiet hum of her loom, the challenge of translating a fleeting image from nature into a tangible design, the satisfaction of seeing her patterns come to life in vibrant colors. She admitted to a longing for connection, a quiet ache she hadn't known how to articulate until now. Ronan listened intently, his gaze warm and attentive. He didn't interrupt, but occasionally offered a thoughtful nod or a gentle, encouraging smile. His presence was comforting, grounding, like the ancient trees surrounding his workshop. "It sounds like we both find a lot of ourselves in our work," he observed, setting his tea mug down. "A way to communicate perhaps what words can't always express." "Perhaps," Elara agreed, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a recognition of shared spirits, of kindred souls who found expression and meaning in the quiet act of creation. He picked up a small, unfinished carving from his workbench, a delicate, intricate leaf. "This is for a client, a bookmark," he explained, his fingers tracing the veins of the wooden leaf. "But sometimes when I'm lost in thought, my hands just wander, and I find myself carving things that have no particular purpose, just because they emerge." He looked at her, a slight hesitation in his gaze. "Like that little bird. It was meant to be a gift, yes, but it was also a reflection of a feeling, a hope for something new to take flight." He paused, then added, almost shyly, "And then you found it." Elara felt her breath catch. The unspoken implication hung in the air between them, shimmering with possibility. The bird wasn't just a lost object, it was an invitation, a serendipitous thread weaving their paths together. "It felt like a promise," she admitted softly, her gaze dropping to the leaf in his hand. "When I found it, I felt a shift, as if something new was beginning." Ronan's eyes softened. He picked up a small, sharp carving tool and gently began to refine the edge of the wooden leaf, his movements precise and practiced. "Sometimes, the smallest things can carry the biggest meanings," he mused. "A lost bird, a chance encounter, a sudden feeling that the world has opened up in a way it hasn't before." He worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the gentle scrape of the tool against wood filling the space. Elara watched him, captivated by the sure, steady movements of his hands, the focused intensity in his eyes. There was a quiet strength about him, a deep connection to his craft that resonated with her own artistic spirit. "Would you like to try?" he asked suddenly, surprising her. He offered her a small, smooth piece of cedar wood and a simple, rounded carving tool. "It's a very forgiving wood. Just feel the grain and let your hands guide you." Elara hesitated, then took the wood and the tool. She had never tried carving before, her world being one of soft fibers and vibrant dyes. But there was something incredibly appealing about the raw, tactile nature of wood. She held the tool, feeling its weight, and tentatively scraped it against the cedar. A delicate curl of wood peeled away, releasing a fresh, clean scent. Ronan leaned slightly closer, his presence warm beside her. "That's it," he encouraged gently. "Don't force it. Let the wood tell you what it wants to be." He guided her hand, his fingers resting lightly over hers, demonstrating a gentle, curving stroke. "See? Like this. Follow the flow." Her heart thrummed at his closeness, at the unexpected intimacy of his guiding hand. The feel of his fingers, strong yet gentle, over hers, made a pleasant warmth spread through her arm. She focused on the wood, on the subtle pressure, on the way the fragrant shavings curled away. It was a simple act, yet profound, a shared moment of creation that felt deeply personal. They spent the rest of the afternoon in companionable silence, punctuated by soft murmurs and shared smiles. Elara managed to carve a rudimentary, though charmingly lopsided, heart from the cedar. Ronan watched her with an amused and encouraging gaze, offering gentle tips. She felt a joy she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging, as if she had always been meant to sit in this sun-dappled workshop, creating alongside this kind, quiet man. As the afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows through the workshop window, a comfortable tiredness settled over them. The air grew cooler, and the scent of wood deepened. "It's getting late." Elara said, a hint of reluctance in her voice. She looked at the small wooden heart in her hand, then at Ronan. Thank you, Ronan, for the tea, for the lesson, and especially for your kindness. The pleasure was all mine, Elara, he replied, his green eyes warm. It was a welcome change, having company in the workshop. He picked up the little carved bird, turning it over in his hand. And I'm glad my little lost friend brought you here. She felt a blush creep up her neck. I'm glad too. She hesitated, then found her courage. I would like to see you again, Ronan, if you're willing. A slow smile spread across his face, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. I would like that very much, Elara. He paused, then added, perhaps you could show me some of your textile patterns sometime. I'm quite curious to see how you capture the woods in your work. I'd love to, she said, her heart soaring. Tomorrow? He nodded, his gaze lingering on hers. Tomorrow. Same time, perhaps. I could even pack us a picnic. We could explore the old ruins properly, or find a new path through the woods. That sounds wonderful, Elara said, her voice soft with happiness. She tucked her small carved cedar heart into her pocket, a new treasure to replace the one she had returned. As she stepped out of the workshop and into the cooling air of the early evening, Ronan walked her to the edge of the clearing. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, casting a warm glow over the ancient trees. Be careful on your way home, Elara, he said, his voice a gentle murmur. I will, she promised, her gaze meeting his. There was a shared understanding in their eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of the burgeoning connection between them. A connection born from a lost bird, a hidden workshop, and the gentle whispers of the woods. She turned to leave, but after a few steps, she looked back. Ronan was still standing at the edge of the clearing, watching her, a thoughtful expression on his face. He lifted a hand in a small farewell wave, and Elara waved back, a wide, genuine smile on her lips. The walk home felt different again. The woods still whispered, but now their whispers carried not just his name, but the echo of his laughter, the warmth of his touch, and the exhilarating promise of a shared future. Her heart was full, not with a fleeting hope, but with a deep, abiding sense of peace, and a joyful anticipation for all the tomorrows yet to come. The world, it seemed, was indeed full of hidden pathways, and she was no longer exploring them alone. The world, it seemed, was indeed full of hidden pathways, and she was no longer exploring them alone. Elara woke the next morning with a lightness in her chest that felt entirely new. The sun streamed through her window, painting golden stripes across her worn rug, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't just greet the day, she embraced it. A simple text message pinged on her phone, a photo of a dew-kissed fern, and a message from Liam. Morning, Elara, still feeling the magic of our walk. Her smile bloomed wide and genuine, just as it had the evening before. Coffee soon, she replied, her fingers dancing over the screen. Soon turned into an afternoon that stretched into evening. They met at the small sun-dappled cafe near the edge of town, talking for hours as cups of steaming coffee turned to iced teas. Liam spoke of his quiet life, his love for the outdoors, his work as a wildlife conservationist that often took him to remote, beautiful places. Elara, in turn, found herself sharing stories she hadn't voiced in years. Her quiet joy in baking, her fascination with old books, her dreams of one day opening a small, cozy bookshop cafe in this very town. There was no pretense, no awkward silences, just an easy flow that felt like coming home. Days melted into weeks, each one weaving their lives more intricately together. They explored hidden waterfalls Liam knew about, sharing sandwiches on mossy rocks. They spent an entire rainy Saturday in Elara's kitchen, Liam clumsily but enthusiastically helping her bake a sourdough loaf, their hands accidentally brushing, sending sparks through her. He listened to her read aloud from her favorite novels, his eyes crinkling at the corners when she got to a particularly witty passage. She watched him sketch the intricate patterns of a bird's nest he'd found, his concentration absolute, his gentleness profound. One evening, as they sat on her porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the deepening twilight, Elara confessed a quiet fear that had long lingered in her heart. The fear of being too quiet, too content in her own solitude, to ever truly share her life with another. Liam simply took her hand, his thumb tracing soft circles on her skin. Elara, he said, his voice a low rumble. Your quietness is a sanctuary. Your contentment, a profound strength. And sharing it with you, it's the greatest adventure I could imagine. It was then, in that simple, honest moment, that Elara understood the true depth of the pathway she had embarked upon. It wasn't just a physical journey through the woods. It was the unfolding of her heart, guided by a love that felt both destined and utterly real. The whispers of the woods had not just called his name, but had sung a melody of belonging, a harmony of two souls finding their perfect counterpoint. Months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Liam led her back to the very spot in the woods where their paths had first undeniably converged. The leaves were a riot of gold and crimson, crunching softly under their feet. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, a scent that now felt synonymous with hope. He knelt beside her, not with a grand gesture, but with the same quiet sincerity that had drawn her to him from the start. "Elara," he began, pulling a small wooden box from his pocket, carved with a delicate fern design. "Remember how we talked about hidden pathways? I found mine, and it led straight to you. I want to explore every tomorrow, every turning, every beautiful surprise, with you by my side. Will you marry me and walk this winding, wonderful path with me forever?" Tears welled in her eyes, tears of absolute joy and profound gratitude. The ring inside the box was simple, a silver band with a tiny, exquisitely cut emerald, the color of the deepest forest. It was perfect. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes, Liam." He slipped the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into a tender embrace, their hearts beating in unison. The woods, her sanctuary, whispered around them, not just with echoes of laughter, but with a symphony of promises. Elara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling utterly at peace, utterly cherished. The world was still full of hidden pathways, but now, holding Liam's hand, she knew that every single one of them would lead to home.